The morning it all changed began like every other, with the sky still half asleep and the city breathing in slow, tired rhythms. Rain clung to the streets like regret, and the smell of cheap coffee drifted from a corner shop that most people passed without noticing. That was where he stood every dawn, a single father with worn shoes, calloused hands, and a heart that had learned to keep going even when life offered very little back. He never imagined that the quiet woman he helped every morning, the one everyone assumed was poor and invisible, would one day walk back into his life followed by lawyers and 4 bodyguards, and that moment would shatter everything he thought he knew about kindness, dignity, and fate. If you believe that kindness still matters, that small good deeds can change lives in ways we don't see right away, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel for more stories about second chances and humanity. His name was Daniel, and every morning started the same way. Before the sun rose, before the world demanded anything from him, he woke his 6-year-old daughter, Emma, gently from sleep. Their apartment was small, with peeling paint and a heater that worked only when it wanted to, but Daniel made it feel safe with routines and patience. He braided Emma's hair with clumsy fingers, packed her lunch with whatever he could afford, and walked her to the neighbor who watched her before school. Only then did he head toward the bus stop, stopping briefly at the corner shop where he worked part-time cleaning floors before his construction shift began. That was where he first noticed the woman. She came every morning around the same time, always wearing the same thin coat no matter the weather. Her shoes were worn at the edges, her hair pulled back simply, her eyes downcast as if she were trying not to be seen. She ordered the cheapest item on the menu, usually just hot water with a tea bag she brought herself. The staff barely acknowledged her. Other customers avoided looking at her altogether. Daniel saw her because he knew what it meant to feel invisible. At first, he helped in small ways without thinking much about it. An extra sugar packet slipped onto her tray, a sandwich wrapped and left near her seat as if forgotten. A quiet nod of acknowledgement, a shared moment of humanity in the early hours when the world was softer. He never asked her name. He never expected thanks. He just did what felt right, even when his own wallet was painfully thin. Life had taught Daniel how quickly things could fall apart. His wife had died 3 years earlier after a sudden illness, leaving him with grief, debt, and a child who asked difficult questions about why her mother wasn't coming home. Construction work was inconsistent, and some weeks he chose between paying the electricity bill or buying fresh fruit. He carried exhaustion like a second skin, but he never let Emma see it. For her, he smiled. For strangers, he stayed kind. The woman became part of his routine, a quiet constant in the background of his mornings. He noticed how she always sat near the window, hands wrapped around her cup, as if warmth were something she had to hold onto tightly. Some days her eyes looked red, as though she had cried before arriving. Other days, there was a distant calm about her, the kind that comes from surviving too much for too long. Daniel wondered about her life but never asked. He believed dignity meant letting people share only what they chose. Weeks turned into months. Winter came and went. The woman never missed a morning, neither did Daniel. There were days when he considered stopping the small kindnesses, days when money was especially tight and fear whispered that he needed to look out for himself first. But then he would think of Emma, of the kind of world he wanted her to grow up in, and he would keep going. One morning, Emma fell sick, and Daniel had to take her to the clinic before work. He arrived late to the shop, breathless and anxious about losing his job. When he looked toward the window seat, the woman wasn't there. For the first time in months, her absence felt heavier than it should have. He told himself not to worry, that people came and went, that life happened. Still, something felt off. She didn't come the next day either, or the next. The seat by the window stayed empty, catching morning light that seemed colder without her presence. Daniel felt a strange sense of loss, like a story left unfinished. He hoped she was safe, hoped his small kindnesses had mattered even a little. Then came the morning that changed everything. The shop doors opened, and the usual hum of early customers paused as if the air itself had shifted. 4 men in dark suits stepped inside first, their posture alert, eyes scanning the room with quiet authority. Behind them walked 2 sharply dressed lawyers, briefcases in hand, expressions serious and focused. And then, between them, came the woman. She looked different, yet unmistakably the same. Her hair was styled neatly now, her coat replaced with an elegant, tailored one. Her posture was straighter, her presence commanding in a way that made conversation stop mid-sentence. But her eyes were the same eyes Daniel remembered, deep and thoughtful, carrying layers of experience. The room buzzed with confusion and curiosity. The staff froze. Customers stared openly now, no longer pretending not to see. Daniel stood still, mop in hand, heart pounding as realization struggled to catch up with disbelief. The woman looked around slowly, taking in the familiar space, the cracked tiles, the old coffee machine. Her gaze finally found Daniel. For a brief moment, the world narrowed to just the two of them, the noise fading into the background. Something unspoken passed between them, a recognition that transcended appearances and assumptions. The lawyer spoke to the manager, explaining who she was and why they were there. Daniel didn't hear every word, but he heard enough. She wasn't poor. She had never been. She was the majority shareholder of the building the shop rented from, the owner of multiple properties across the city. She had been living quietly, deliberately, stepping away from wealth and protection after a painful betrayal within her own family had left her distrustful and disillusioned. She had wanted to see the world as it really was, to know who treated others with kindness when there was nothing to gain. And in those early mornings when she stripped away her status and protection, Daniel had shown her more humanity than most people in her powerful circle ever had. The manager panicked, apologizing profusely, fearing consequences. The staff looked ashamed. Customers whispered. Daniel felt his chest tighten with a mix of confusion, embarrassment, and a strange sense of relief. He hadn't been wrong about her needing kindness, even if he had been wrong about her circumstances. The woman requested a private moment with Daniel. The bodyguard stayed close, but she insisted on speaking near the window where she used to sit. The space felt charged with emotion, history pressing in on the present. She explained that she had been ill months earlier, not physically but emotionally and spiritually. After discovering that those closest to her valued her wealth more than her well-being, she had walked away from everything. She chose anonymity as a form of healing. Daniel listened, realizing that poverty wasn't always about money. Sometimes it was about trust, connection, and being seen as a human being. She told him that his quiet kindness had been a lifeline during a time when she questioned the value of people altogether. She had watched him with his daughter in the mornings, seen the patience in his eyes, the sacrifices he made without complaint. He had reminded her that goodness still existed, even in small, unnoticed corners of the world. Then she offered to change his life. She offered to pay off his debts, secure his job, fund Emma's education, even provide a new home. The weight of the offer pressed down on Daniel, heavy and overwhelming. For a moment, the exhaustion of years tempted him to accept everything without question. But something inside him hesitated. He had helped her without expecting reward. Accepting everything felt like turning kindness into a transaction. He told her that while he was grateful, he didn't want charity. What he wanted was stability, dignity, and a chance to build something better for his daughter through honest work. He asked only for help finding a steady job and access to affordable childcare so he could work without fear. The woman was visibly moved by his response. She saw in him not pride, but integrity. She agreed, offering him a full-time position managing maintenance across her properties, with fair pay, benefits, and flexible hours. It wasn't a handout, it was an opportunity. Life didn't transform overnight into a fairy tale, but it changed in meaningful ways. Daniel no longer worked himself to the bone for uncertain wages. Emma started attending a better school, her laughter filling their evenings with a lightness Daniel hadn't felt in years. The woman, whose name he finally learned, remained part of their lives, not as a savior, but as a friend who understood the value of humility and compassion. The corner shop still opened every morning, the same smell of coffee drifting into the street. But now, the staff greeted everyone with a little more warmth. People noticed the quiet ones. Small acts of kindness rippled outward, invisible but powerful. Just before the ending of this story, take a moment and comment below what this journey made you feel. One word is enough: hope, kindness, gratitude, or something deeply personal. Near the end of his days, when Daniel reflected on how close he had come to bitterness, he realized something profound. He hadn't helped a poor woman. He had helped a human being. And in doing so, he had taught his daughter, and everyone watching, that kindness given freely has a way of finding its way back, often in forms we could never predict. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that even the smallest good deed can echo loudly in someone else's life, please like this video, share it with others, and stay connected with our channel. Your support helps keep stories like this alive, stories that remind us who we can be when we choose compassion over judgment. Because sometimes the people we think are invisible are the ones quietly testing whether the world is still worth believing in. And sometimes, all it takes is one ordinary person doing something kind every morning to change everything.